Good afternoon. With me, I have the new DG of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, Dr. Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so the world is an inflection point with free and fair trade near the top of the list. Trade wars have returned, trading blocs have weakened, and the multilateral approach to addressing trade issues and disputes have waned. The COVID-19 pandemic has closed borders, upended supply chains, and dragged down the world economy at the same time as global warming is taking its toll on society and infrastructure. What is the way forward?
Well, thank you. That's a very big question that we could spend the whole day on, but I'll try my best to be crisp. I think first and foremost is to solve the pandemic. Obviously, you cannot regain the economies back on track to sustainable growth unless you take care of the health aspects of this pandemic. So the way forward is how can we assure equitable access and affordable access to all countries, poor and rich alike, to vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics, so that we can have, populations back able and countries back able to function economically. Some countries have lost years and decades of growth. Many of the poor countries, especially the African continent, all the gains it made in the last couple of decades are in danger of being wiped out. So we really need to act with urgency. So we need to find how do we rebuild. Everybody is talking about build back better. And I think that is a very good way of looking at it. We have to rebuild. We have to know that this is a global pandemic, that we're all in it together.
Okay, so my next question would be, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala comes highly recommended in a home country and beyond. One of your expertise is to ensure that there's a fair distribution of resources and it has not gone unnoticed. So given the challenges of conflict facing member states, what distinctive plans have you prepared that you believe will steer the direction of the organization in a seamless, positive way?
I think that there are 2 or 3 top priorities for the WTO to contribute and steer members in the right direction. First of all, the WTO needs to quickly be seen as helping to solve the present economic problems and health problems of the world. So how does WTO contribute to solving the pandemic? By making sure there is a free flow of medical goods and supplies and there are no restrictions on supply chains to produce these goods, including vaccines. 100 members now have export restrictions or prohibitions of some kind. So how do we encourage them to drop these or make them more transparent and temporary, as WTO rules say? So that's one, helping to solve the COVID issue and getting trade also to be part of the economic recovery, because we can't recover unless we produce more goods and trade with ourselves more. I think freer, more liberal trade, returning to that kind of regime is important. Another priority is to reform the dispute settlement system of the WTO. People call it the jewel in the crown of the WTO because it's the only place in the world, where countries can take each other in before an adjudication mechanism when they have trade disputes. In the old days, countries used to go to war because of trade issues. Now we are past that. We have this place, but at this moment it has been paralyzed, blocked from functioning because some members like the United States had problems and criticisms. So we need to reform that, and all members have to be part of it. Even developing countries also had their own complaints about the dispute settlement system. So to reform it, we need to take all of this into account. So that's another priority. Then there's a fishery subsidies negotiation that has been going on for 20 years. And I'm saying enough. We have to bring this to a conclusion. Members have to solve their differences, because when you are negotiating something for 20 years, that means you've forgotten why you're negotiating and who the negotiations are for. They're supposed to be for people. It's supposed to lead to restocking of our fisheries in our oceans, to stop illegal and overfishing and overcapacity, stop subsidies going to vessels, that are overfishing and illegally fishing, so we can replenish our stocks. You have to keep reminding yourself that. So we need to finish that, get that as a success. That's a top priority. And then another thing is to look at the digital economy. We are in it now. There's no going back. E-commerce has now come to stay. And I actually think that we can look at how to put rules that will be beneficial to the whole world and ensure that this takes place under a fair, transparent set of rules that creates a level playing field. You know that many of our women, many of our young people are using the internet to sell things, to run their businesses. This is e-commerce. So I think it could really work for us in the developing countries. This is one way for small and medium enterprises to get into the world market and even into value chains, regional and global value chains. So I think that's a priority, that we should be able to work on that and take that forward. And like I said, another priority is climate change and trade. Climate change is, again, another thing we call one of the global commons issues, just like the pandemic, meaning this is an issue that no one country can solve. It has to be all countries, a multilateral approach to solve it. That climate change is the same. And so how does it affect our trade? And what rules do we have that can be positive towards that? And then, there are many, but let me just say another one is, I've already mentioned it, how do we help the world to be more inclusive? Because we have marginalized populations, marginalized countries. Globalization has not, affected everyone positively, equally. So how can the world trading system come back to be a contributor to inclusion? By trying to get small and medium enterprises, who are the creators of jobs in every country, rich and poor, to participate more in regional and global value chains. These are some of the issues. Using the world trading system to improve inclusion, reduce inequality, improve living standards. Those are things that I'll be looking at.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Mrs. Ngozi. It was very good having you on the show. Thank you.